That's a wrap on the New York Jets 2024 preseason schedule as Gangrene downs the New York Giants 10-6. And listen, what I would classify as a about as interesting as you can get football game when you're talking final preseason game, no starters are on the field. The things that you hope to see. Now, listen, the quarterbacks were not good, um, and they are what they are. These are guys who weren't drafted. These are guys who don't have pro experience. I prefer Peasley. Honestly, I feel like Martinez is more of a turnover risk. Neither of them threw a ton of picks this preseason. Martinez had the one. He had another one that was dropped. Neither one is very good. I did Scott Mason's Play Like a Jet yesterday, wrapping up the game, and he talked about how there are rumblings in Miami that Mike White could be let go. Now, for me personally, yeah, I take Mike White over both these guys as a QB3, but that's neither here nor there. The QBs were bad, but the protection wasn't bad. Izzy Abanikanda showed some life. Listen, there's not a bigger Izzy fan than me out there. All right, I love the guy. Carrying four backs seems very unlikely, especially if they look to carry a fullback, which they maybe Yeboah, maybe Ruckert gets the fullback reps. Who knows what happens there? But offensively, not a lot going on outside of Izzy. A little bit of, again, we saw some decent blocking. Xavier Valade, let's give him some credit. Looked good catching the ball out of the backfield, but they're certainly not keeping him and Izzy. But look, Rich Cimini just put out his projected 53. He's got Izzy on there. I would put Izzy on there, but that's, again, admittedly my bias. I left him off of the initial 53 we did, myself and Dylan Terman last week or a couple weeks ago. But then I said the other day on our show, I said, you know what? I left him off because I didn't want to, I didn't want people saying, oh, you're a homer. You've been an Izzy stan all this time. But I just think he's good enough. I think Izzy Abanikanda is a good enough player to be on this roster. So if Isaiah Davis is going to be primarily special teams, which is a possibility, Izzy as an RB3 isn't a bad idea. So does he stick? We'll see. Would I keep him? Absolutely. Absolutely. Young, fresh legs. And we saw last night, yes, it was some bad tackling, but I thought that Izzy did a nice job last night, ran hard, as doing a better job of that. People say, oh, he never ran hard in college. That's not true. Now, did he do it consistently enough? Did he show the power you want to see? Maybe not. But, there were people just dogging Izzy this offseason. Can't do it. Can't run between the tackles. Won't lower his shoulder. There's film showing he will. And maybe now he got the message and he's running with a bit more physical style, which is great because let him run somebody over then and allow that to create some space. He's 215. He's, lightning quick. He's a guy who can be a really good player, in my opinion. So we'll see if he makes the roster. I think he's I want to say he's a lock for the practice squad, but I think he'd get scooped up by somebody, probably Miami. They like every running back that runs a sub 4.4. But again, offense, not a lot there. Malachi Corley almost had a really nice play on third down. The ball slipped out. Wasn't an easy catch, though. Wasn't a great throw. Jason Brownlee, I believe, had a couple of grabs. So, but again, you scored 10 points, and your touchdown came on an Izzy run. Again, there was some bad tackling, but you did get to see his speed. Defensively, now that's where all the fun was, right? Anybody watching this game and hoping to see something big from some of the undrafted guys, the young players who all have something to prove. They put on a show. They really did. Whether it was McGregor off the edge who had a couple of sacks. This is a guy, again, speaking of the 53 I just looked at from Rich Cimini, doesn't have McGregor making it. I can't see someone not scooping him up. He showed speed to power. He showed motor. Stronger than you would think. Stronger than I expected him to be with the bull rush. So here's a guy, again, out of a major program, significant contributor out of a major program who had a good Senior Bowl, or good Senior Bowl week, I should say, and joins the Jets undrafted and has been their best pass rusher. Leonard Taylor, the DT out of Miami, was unstoppable last night. Now, listen, there are some reps on film where he's getting washed out on run plays and, not anchoring as well as you would like. But at the same time, if this guy can keep penetrating the way he has been this preseason, I don't expect him to go out there and get 10 sacks. I'm not, let's slow down. But he's still a guy who has been very good at pressuring the quarterback. He's had some TFLs. I don't see how he doesn't make the roster. I mean, this team needs some depth. Solomon Thomas, Michael Clemens, these are guys who I think Clemens, I wouldn't rule out completely the possibility of him being let go and in favor of one of these young guys. Solomon Thomas, he had 5 sacks last year, which is, he's an impossible guy not to like. Thomas, in terms of the human being that he is. You hear him talk about mental health awareness and all that. Hard guy not to root for, but hasn't been the most productive player. You wonder if you can replace his numbers with one of the rookies while cutting a little bit of salary. But I'm not saying I think that's going to happen. I think Saleh loves the guy. I think Thomas is one of Robert Saleh's favorites from San Francisco. Brian says he went to the game. Listen, like I said, for it's about as much as you can hope for a preseason finale. So I hope you had a good time at the game, Brian. So defensively, again, I thought the corners looked good. We saw plays from Codrington. We saw plays. Trey Swilling, he's not making the roster, and that's not a knock on him. There's just too much depth. But I feel like he did a good job for a guy who came into camp late. Didn't see a whole lot from the safeties last night that I can recall. Chaz Surratt, very good at linebacker again. Zaire Barnes did a nice job at linebacker again. These are both guys who are – there are some who have projected both of them making the roster. I don't see that. I don't see Mosley, Williams, Sherwood, Surratt, and Barnes all making the roster. The Jets, for the first time in a very long time, I think, are going to have a lot of very long discussions about a lot of guys on this team because they have some guys who played really well. Do you keep 4 running backs because you feel like Izzy turned the corner? Do you keep another D lineman or 2? Because Eric Watts, who I didn't even mention, he had a half a sack last night. He had a pass batted down to the line of scrimmage. I think pre-draft, I think that was my biggest takeaway from him watching some of his UConn film. And I'd said, this guy, he's long enough and aware enough. You see him, saw several plays where he's either getting a hand on the ball or coming up just short, but he's clearly keeping an eye on the quarterback, doing a good job of anticipating where he's going with the ball and getting his hand up in a passing lane. We saw him do that last night. He's, he checks in at around 275, 280, so he's a little bit bigger than McGregor, and maybe Watts has that little bit of versatility. I've seen some people say maybe he's the guy who replaces John Franklin Myers. I don't think he's on JFM's level. He's not on JFM's level, not right now anyway. But again, some very difficult decisions for this Jets front office to make when it comes to who to keep, and especially on the defensive side of the ball. And speaking of the defensive side of the ball, Haason Reddick still hasn't reported. Season's about to start. Game checks are about to start getting missed. That's when it gets real. But, for you and me, it would have been real a long time ago. You tell me you're finding me $50,000 a day, that's football players aren't dealing with the issues that, Joe Blow fan is dealing with. But for Reddick, if he's about to start missing game checks, that's real money. And he's got to decide, and this is where it gets difficult. He's got to decide, do I come back, tail between my legs, having gained nothing from this holdout, having lost multiple millions of dollars, and come play for this team? Or do I keep holding out to where I'm actually going to, lose 4, 5, 6, 7, $8 million, half my salary, whatever it may be, and then report week 10, 11, which is what he would have to do if he wants his accrued season to go toward next year, so that he can hit free agency. Now, one thing that people have talked about is that, if when Haason Reddick comes back, he wants a new deal. So no matter what, whether he's happy with his current deal or not, he's going to play hard because he's trying to prove to NFL GMs that he's worth a huge investment. What about the fact that he's already proven he's worth that investment? I mean, Haason Reddick, one of the most productive pass rushers, top 5 pass rusher over the past 4 seasons in the NFL. And this is why, now listen, I've said before that he's got no leverage and this is he's getting bad advice here. That doesn't mean he's not right in saying, hey, I deserve X amount. And I'm not big on holdouts. I understand they happen. In a case of a guy like Reddick, he's never had that huge, elite pass rusher payday. This is his last chance to get one. And he's played several years well under market value. So I do kind of sympathize. Like this isn't a guy who had one big year after some mediocre seasons, and now all of a sudden he wants a huge payday. This is a guy who's been doing it for years, and he's up there with the elites. When you look at him, when you stack him against the other guys in the league who have produced on his level, they're making double him. And that's been going on for years. So he feels like, and I say this all the time with pro athletes, when fans talk about, oh my God, he's making $12 million a year, what does he care? Right. But if you're that guy and you're looking at all your peers and you're just as good at the job as they are, and they're making 24, 25, 26, 27 million, you don't look at it as I'm making 12 million a year. You're like, why am I losing 15 million a year? Why did I make 15 million less than this guy this year and last year? And I'm projected to again next year. That's $45 million. So that's where he's coming from. And I get it. But at the same time, dude, you got to show up. You're under contract. The team has said they're not trading you. And they said if you want a new deal, you get that by showing up and performing. So if he wants a deal from the Jets, he's got to show up and perform. But if you're an NFL GM and Haason Reddick reports to camp for the Jets this year, he shows up, oh, my hamstring, oh, my back, my ankle hurts, I just tweaked my knee, can't practice, can't play. I see people saying, well, he can't do that because then teams aren't going to give him a big deal. Aren't they? You don't think teams are going to know that the agent's going to give him a wink? Oh, my guy was dinged up this year. You know what? My guy just had a year off to rest his body, and now he's ready to go, and you know he's an elite player, and you need an edge rusher. You think a team's going to go, oh, we're not going to pay him. He hardly played last year. Yeah, you know why he hardly played. You know this wouldn't be a real situation. It wouldn't be like, oh, he's actually injured. Oh, he's on the shelf for legitimate reasons. No, you would know that this dude feels like he's lost $40+ million. And whatever happened, whatever transpired with the Jets, and listen, here's why I think Reddick is more in the wrong. Because Reddick said publicly, because of the person I am, I'm going to be here no matter what. So if he's saying it publicly, I have every reason to believe he told the Jets the same thing. Yeah, I'll be here. We'll sort out the contract. I'll be here. And the Jets, again, made it clear that he was going to have to be there to get the new contract. So I think Reddick is the one who is going to, again, he stands to lose a lot here, but he's standing on it. And if he continues to, he risks losing the vested season, which he's not going to allow to happen. So he will show up at some point. Haason Reddick might show up week 1, and he might ball out and get, well, he's not getting 15 sacks in this defense. He's not going to play enough snaps. But he might have a phenomenal year. But he also might just come in and say, this hurts, that hurts, can't go, I need to sit. And again, you can tell me till you're blue in the face, Glenn, he can't do that. He's playing, he wants a big contract. He can't show up and not play. Teams know he can play. And if he does choose to just say, you know what? I'm not gonna play ball this season. I'm not gonna step in there and I'm not gonna step in there and try to play at a normal level because you guys traded for me and you're not paying me. Everyone's gonna know this. And again, if you are an NFL general manager who this offseason needs a pass rusher, you think a pass rusher is gonna put you over the top, make you a Super Bowl contender? Do you honestly think a general manager is not going to sign Haason Reddick? A guy who has played at a high level for, 5 years now? 5 consecutive seasons of high-end production? Knowing he just had a year off to rest? And, he's 30. That the one thing that's hurting him is his age. I think that's going to be the interesting thing with Haason Reddick. He's going to get paid. But it's a matter of, are teams going to tie themselves to him for 4 years, 5 years? Or are they going to say, look, man, you're 30, we'll give you 2 years. We'll give you 3, but, avoid year, whatever it is, where they're not tied in for too much cash, but you're going to have to pay the guy. And you're not going to convince me that somebody won't pay Haason Reddick if he decides to mail it in this year and say, I can't go. Here I am in camp. Oh, I hurt myself on day 1. Darrelle Revis did it years ago. Came first practice of the year, right? Held out, came in, took part in a few plays and grabbed his hamstring and walked off. Oh, hamstring hurts. And I think he kind of winked or smiled, when they asked him about it afterwards. So, these things happen. Something along those lines. So players will do it. Now, again, Revis got his deal. He played. That's fine. Maybe Reddick gets his deal. Maybe he doesn't. But if he doesn't get his deal and he decides he's not going to play, or he's just going to, find reasons not to be put on the field, I don't think this coming off season we're going to see, Philly ain't signing him. So we'll say we're not going to see 30 other GMs look at him and say, oh, that guy's too high risk. You're going to say this is a 10, 12, 13 sack a year guy who played well under market value for 3 years and then felt he was wronged by the team that traded for him, so he decided not to play. There's put it this way, there is zero reason to expect that if you paid him next offseason that he would be a problem, because he's never been a problem. And this, we know, everybody knows why he's doing what he's doing. He feels he's worth a lot more money. So if you are the team that gives him a lot more money, there's zero reason to expect he won't come in, play at full effort, and ball. Now, listen, I say this all the time with guys. You don't know. When a guy gets that first, here's your guaranteed 50, 60, however many million, some guys do go into cruise control. But that's the NFL. You're not going to not pay guys. You're not going to just allow elite free agents at premier positions to sit out there because you think, oh, if I pay this guy, he might start mailing it in. That's a risk you take. And it happens. Albert Haynesworth, right? Probably the most famous example. Guy was literally laying down on the field watching plays unfold, as I believe he was the highest paid defensive player in the NFL at that point. Well, he was up there, whatever it may be. But yeah, there's a risk with every player that when you hand him that first enormous check, and especially if it's your last one, right? Reddick's 30. If someone gave him a 3-4 year deal, that's his last time hitting free agency. But again, that's just that's the price of doing business, that risk that you take. So Reddick, you're not going to convince me that Haason Reddick, if he went into this offseason after not really seeing the field this year, that teams wouldn't be lining up to pay him. They would know why. Now, listen, if he plays 50, 60, 70% of the snaps and doesn't produce, that's different. Because maybe he's not giving full effort because of the contract. I don't think he would. I think once you're on the field, you're, a guy like Reddick, as well as he plays. But then you can raise some questions and say, hey, he was on the field and didn't perform. Maybe it was because he was unhappy, but is it really? So there would be some risk for Reddick if he were to play and not play hard. Teams would catch that on film anyway. But if he played and didn't produce, that's really bad. But if he comes in, aches, pains, tweaks, pulls, sprains, guys, I can't go, I can't play, well, then what? Teams are going to know what he did, why he did it, and somebody of the 30 NFL teams that would be interested, because it wouldn't be the Jets and it wouldn't be Philly. Of the 30 NFL teams looking at free agency next year, somebody would pay Haason Reddick. So he would get his big payday. I'm not buying into this. If he doesn't show up, he's not going to get a big deal. Completely disagree. Too good a player, too important a position. We'll see what happens. We'll see what the Jets do over the next few days. Cuts are going to come rolling in. 53-man roster. They're going to trim it down. Always important to remember, the 53 is never really the 53 for the first few days, right? Because we're going to have guys let go by other teams that your personnel departments like, and you're going to let some of your own guys go to bring in somebody who got let go. But I think with the Jets, in the case of the Jets, I think we're going to see a lot of guys picked up. And I think we're going to see Joe Douglas working the phones. I think they're going to go right up to that deadline, because I think they're going to be working the phones trying to deal a player or two rather than just cut them loose, because they do have some guys who I think are worth day 3 picks if they do choose to if they do decide that some of these guys aren't going to make, we mentioned Izzy, we've talked about Siebert. These are guys who have some value. So we'll see what happens there. That'll wrap this one up. Just want to talk last night's game, talk about Reddick, and the fact that I'm not convinced he won't get paid if he shows up and decides, I can't go.